Good morning. My name is Steve Souza, and I'm the chairman for the Dried Fruit Working Group, which includes Raisins, Sultanas, Currants, and Cranberries. A little bit about myself. I'm currently the director of global commodity sales with Mariani Packing Company. We're growers, processors, and handlers of various dried fruits, namely raisins, cranberries, and dried prunes. At this time, I'd like to introduce my staff here and tell you a little bit about each one before we go ahead and get into the presentation. Mr. Sohrab Masudi, put your hand up, please, Sohrab. Sohrab is from Toronto, Canada. He was born in Iran and has dual citizenship in both Canada and Iran. In 1993, he founded Marcia Foods, and they're an importer, trader, and distributor of dried fruits and nuts. In 2015, he founded the Rasim Market Development Company, which is a modern plant located in Iran, processing raisins and dates. Mr. Ahmet Göksen from Izmir, Turkey. He is chairman of Aksha since 1982. And one of his many duties is to oversee the purchasing of sales of Turkish apricots, raisins, and figs. He's also on the board of directors of the Aegean Export Association and the Dried Fruit Exporters Union of Turkey. Mrs. Courtney Hendrickson, who resides in Rhode Island, USA. Courtney has worked with Ocean Spray since 2006. She has held numerous roles in the sales and marketing departments, managing the ingredient and branded sales for Ocean Spray. She currently is the Senior Manager of Ingredient Innovation and Marketing globally of the Ocean Spray brand. And lastly, my hybrid, George Souza Jr. George is from California, USA. He's currently the president of Mariani Packing Company. He has over 35 years of experience in the dried fruit industry in all aspects of the company, and his most notable responsibilities to date are overseeing the company's cranberry and raisin operations. A little bit about what we're going to talk about today. It's a hot topic. A lot of things have happened in raisins and cranberries this past year, and the goal, number one, is to stay on time, and number two, to give you the most information that we have to date statistically, as well as having the experts answer a number of questions from myself as well as your all. First, we're going to talk about the world raisin supply of Currants and Sultanas. Based on the attached chart, you can see we're basically in balance with supply this year. A number of factors go behind that. One thing to take note is that currants do play an important role in this number, even though the variety is different than both a Sultana and a Thompson raisin. At this time, I'd like to ask each panelist a question as it pertains to their region. Mr. Masudi, can you elaborate for Iran on both the 2017 and 2018 crops?
Good day to everybody. 2017 crop was short in Iran due to many reasons, including the weather and drought that we had in Iran. Iran is a dry country per se, and we're having a shortage of water. And it had a huge effect on the crop. So we got about 120,000 metric tons of product that was used mostly in domestic market, and some of it, which was golden, was exported as well. This year, 2018 crop, we were expecting a fairly large crop, which was about 210,000 metric tons, but we got a little bit of a bad luck in early April. So this year we are expecting to have anywhere between 170 to 180,000 metric tons overall raisin. All varieties, Golden, Thompson, and Sultana.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmet, can you give me some information on Turkey?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and good morning to everybody. Last season in Turkey, we have estimated 310,000 tons. But from the fresh business, the goods were not sold as fresh because of some problems with our neighbors, and some goods converted to dry, and eventually we have a crop around 330,000 tons. And successfully we sold this crop. Nearly this crop is sold. Only stocks remained at the traders and the exporters. And the quality was also very good last season. This was also one of the reasons that how we can sell the crop very well. And now we are moving to a new crop of 2018. Agriculture is open air factory. We never know what will happen, especially with the effect of this global warming issues. We may have a very different changing variable weather conditions. And we estimated our crop around 310,000 tons with a carryover of 20,000 tons at the exporters' stocks. And hopefully we will sell this product again successfully. Quality-wise, I want to say a few things. Last year's quality was all right. This year we may have little problems because of the winter conditions. It was not cold enough, and the wine trees were a little bit tired from the last year's bumper crop. So we will wait and see what will happen in early September. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sousa,
Mr. Souza.
can you elaborate on California crop?
Sure. The California crop, as many people know, has gone through some big changes in the last couple of years. We have had a excess supply for the last couple of years. This past crop, which shows 215,000 metric tons on the chart, was expected to be closer to 240,000 metric tons during harvest. Once harvest started, we had 2 rains during the harvest, which dramatically impacted the crop as well as the quality of the product. So we have changed really the supply situation in California in a very short period of time. Going forward, we're showing an estimate of 236,000 metric tons. It's very early. There have not been any official estimates yet. But based on the acreage that we see and an average crop size, I feel that that number is probably going to be fairly representative of what we can expect to see on the upcoming crop.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sohrab, coming back to you on Iran. My understanding, there's been some rains that took place in April on the crop, and give the audience an understanding of what effect, if any, the rains had.
It wasn't only rain, it was snow and frost, and we had quite a serious frost at the beginning of April. But fortunately, it happened before pruning of the vine trees. So most of the regions, they recovered from the frost, and the only region that was hit a little bit harder than the rest of them was Pakistan, that we believe 70% of the crop has been recovered. The rest of the regions, as of this morning that I got the report from Tehran, they haven't been affected. So the anticipation is, as I mentioned before, we will have about 20,000 metric tons shorter than the expected crop of 200,000. So it is a good crop, and it's 180,000 metric tons. And we are hoping that Iran is going to increase their crop. We had about 12% extra acreage this year. And by the help of government, they are going for irrigation system, drop irrigation, not flood irrigation, which is a good thing for the Iranian crop, and it will increase the productivity of the vine trees.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmet, what growth do you expect in global demand over the next years, and what can be done to stimulate more global demand?
Thank you. When we look overall figures, we see increasing production and increasing world trade. And to understand today's situation, we have to go a little bit behind. And when we go to, I have some figures with me. I want to mention about these figures. In 1980s, we have only 56,000 hectares in Turkey for growth of the sultanas, and it's about 100,000 tons. And in millennium, we have 70,000, and now we have at 2017 100,000 hectares. So it's growing in Turkey, and while it is decreasing, let's say, in US. In Turkey, we have good marketing opportunities, and we are making different products. Especially, we are moving from conventional sultanas to organic sultanas. Is now about 10% of the crop is organic, and the health consciousness of the people are increasing. Zero sugar, less sugar, and healthy snacks. These are the main reasons of increase in consumption. And we, apart from organic projects in Turkey, we have IPM projects. This is good agricultural practices. And on that one, we are, as exporters, distributing pesticides free of charge to growers. And we ask them to use only the ones which is permitted by us with the correct application terms. And these are helping us to get goods with low pesticide MRL values. And these are helping us to penetrate new markets and to keep our existing clients. Another thing what stimulating the demand in Turkey is undipped raisins or Thompsons. Due to attractive prices, we expect Turkish growers to convert more Thompsons coming year from Sultanas to Thompsons. This will be up to 50 to 60,000 tons, and this will be a new product into the market that will help marketing of the Turkish product. While we are doing this kind of activities at the international market, we have to do something for the domestic. The consumption in Turkish domestic market is very low. It's about 250 grams. And we had a project under the control of Minister of Agriculture to distribute children at the primary and secondary school raisins. And this is now, this has a contribution about 6,000 tons to consumption. So demand, we are having new generations to get used to sultana consumption, and both internationally and locally, we expect to have more potential for the growth of the trade for the sultanas.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Souza, what is the future outlook for the California grower of raisins over the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, historically, the production has been in excess of 300,000 metric tons in the United States. There's been a lot of turnover with acreage, planting different crops. There has been acreage removed of raisin varieties. There's also some acreage being planted back in at much higher yields per acre. But I would say for the next 2 to 5 years, the 235 to 250,000 metric ton average production is probably going to be representative of what we're going to see in the marketplace. We've had historically sales of around 270,000 metric tons as well. So I believe it's going to remain in balance from the United States side for the near term.
Thank you very much. We have got about a minute left on raisins. I just want to ask Mr. Sorab, Mr. Ahmed, there's been reports about some pesticide issues in both of your regions. I'd like to give you about 30 seconds each to address it so we can move forward.
Who to start?
Well, I'll have you start, Mr. Sorab.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the Iranian government has been pretty active on this issue. They have given a list to the Ministry of Commerce to abandon import of that kind of pesticide, and they have been campaigning with through television, through media, to train farmers not to use certain pesticides, but still we get a very isolated cases here and there that they find some pesticide and they use it, and that is really the one that we get into trouble. It is not widely used, but isolated cases are the cases that are causing trouble, which we are hoping that through training it's going to be resolved and we can get over with this pesticide issue, which is becoming more and more important in the Western world, the US and Canada.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ahmet, same question for Turkey.
Well, in Turkey, we have so many growers, 60,000 in number. And similar crop at US, I think producing with 2,000 growers. And these growers, they have very small lands. And in these small lands, each of them, they apply different pesticides. Our problem for the pesticides mainly come from this small vineyard and small growers issue. Why it is like that? Because we have lots about 20 tons, a container. And one truck, one lot, we can collect from 6 different workers, growers sometimes. And if each of them apply 5 different pesticides, at the end we may getting results with 30 different pesticides. This is the main problem we were suffering, and that is what we are trying to avoid. In Turkey, indeed, our regulation is harmonized with the European Union. We have only 40 approved pesticides used in the vineyards. But because of the mentioned situation, we have this issue, and now we are working very closely with our Minister of Agriculture, and they are educating growers. We are, as Exporters Union, we are educating them, giving them the right information at the right time and the recipes, and we are overcoming the problem. Now, after this clarified force issue last season, our Minister of Agriculture is very careful, and they immediately follow the world developments. And after Iprodion issue started in Europe at the end of the year, in 3 weeks' time, they put a ban for the application of this pesticide, and they canceled its license.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to turn the page and talk about cranberries, and we're going to show the chart next, but I want you all to understand it's a very confusing chart. So what I've asked is Ms. Courtney Hendrickson to please come on up and kind of explain to us how we read the chart, and then talk a little further about cranberries in general.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Steve mentioned, I just wanted to point out before we get into the chart, I think the cranberry is the only fruit at this conference that is actually, we report it as a processed fruit. The raw material cranberry comes in and it is almost immediately processed into either a sweetened dried cranberry or cranberry concentrate. So the numbers you see here are reflective of sweetened dried cranberry production, but just for context, the fruit comes in, it's produced into a sweetened dried cranberry, and also cranberry concentrate comes out of that process as well. But for the INC conference, we've always talked about cranberry in terms of the processed sweetened dried cranberry, so that's how we're going to show it today. Before I get into the chart, just a recap of the crop, which is predominantly a U.S. crop, but also grown in Canada and a very small amount of acres in Chile. So the 2017 crop for cranberry last fall was 11 million barrels. Again, for context, I think cranberry industry is the only one that uses barrels, but a barrel is 100 pounds of fruit or 45 kilos. So last year's crop was 11 million barrels, which is approximately 580,000 metric tons. It was down 18% unexpectedly. The industry was not expecting that. We were expecting a slight increase. The two key regions that drove the decline were Eastern Canada was down about 1 million barrels, or about 45,000 metric tons, and then the U.S., Wisconsin, and Massachusetts also down approximately the same amount. So looking ahead to this year's crop, 2018, which is in October. You know, we have a very early projection on the crop, but it is still very early and very preliminary. So the initial projection is that the crop will come in at 12.8 million barrels. So that's approximately 550,000 metric tons. So that would be an increase over last year of about just over 10%. Again, it's still early, so we're still watching to see how those numbers play out as we get closer and closer to August and September. The Chilean crop, just as a point, it's very, very small. It's under 500,000 barrels of fruit for the industry, but that crop is a counter harvest, so they harvest in the March-April timeframe, and that just came in about 8% down from last year at 450,000 barrels, or about 20,000 metric tons. All these numbers I just mentioned don't include an industry dynamic that was new last year for us, a volume regulation. So last year, 2017, the USDA restricted 15% of the U.S. fruit coming out of the crop. This year, 2018, it's still under review and proposal, but the proposal is for 25% of the fruit potentially for the U.S. crop. So to the chart you see behind me, again, that's dried cranberry production. You'll see that essentially the last year, 17 to 18, and this year, which would start in September of 2018, the year ahead, it's flat and the growth is just almost 3%. Cranberry production has been very strong and is very tight based on the demand we have for sweetened dried cranberries, which has grown exponentially over the past decade. On top of that is the crop coming in smaller last year, significantly than expected, plus a volume set aside. The fruit's very restricted as well, so that's why you see it relatively unchanged numbers from last year to this year.
Great, thanks, Courtney. I'll trade spots with you here.
Okay.
So a few questions on cranberries for our cranberry experts. Courtney, you kind of covered 2017 and 18, but there's this, I guess I'll defer to you, Mr. Souza. There's this USDA volume regulation program that's been proposed this year. And can you kind of give us a brief introduction of what it means and how it works?
It's a difficult and somewhat confusing concept, and because what happens when we produce sweetened dried cranberries, which are in high demand and in very tight supply, as Courtney pointed out, we also produce concentrate. And the SDC demand has grown so fast over the last 15 years or so that has outpaced the demand for concentrate. So it creates, one, an inequity in balance of inventory, and secondly, has also driven a lot of new planting in the industry to keep up with the demand for dried cranberries, which again has increased the excess supply of concentrate. The government program was put into place beginning with this 2017 crop, was done against an estimated crop thought to be much higher than it ended up being. Once the program was implemented, it had to be maintained. So although we came in at 10, 11, 12% below the estimates in the U.S., the program volume control or reduction of 15% still applied. Part of that initial program was an application for the 2018 crop, which was set at 75% delivery and a 25% set aside. So because the program was already approved by USDA and put into motion, what it has done because of the short crop this past season is it made a very, very tight supply on the SDC side. Plants are at full capacity, and the market, as those of you that are in it have seen, the market has changed dramatically. But again, because of the requirement that when you make a dried cranberry, you also have to produce concentrate, it creates an imbalance that is intended to be corrected through the volume control regulations.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hendrickson, can you share your and Ocean Spray's thoughts on the 2018 crop and beyond? Where do you see volume being
Well, we know that the demand on dried cranberries warrants bigger crops. So the hope is that the crops will continue to grow as they have in previous years to support the demand and the innovation that has really been the engine behind this industry. So that's the hope, and I think with the changes in the next few years, there'll be more investment made in planting new acres and renovating that will ultimately give us more fruit in the industry to use to make dried cranberries and to continue growing innovation and supporting the industry and the growers.
Great, thank you. We have a few audience questions here we're going to kind of get into, and the first one we'll take here is from Mr. Mark Maroney Packing Company. Does your, Courtney, I'll address this to you actually, does your 2018-19 supply numbers include the grower disposal of 25%?
No, the numbers don't include the disposal, the set aside that's currently under review, and it's not yet finalized, so the numbers weren't reflecting that.
Great, thank you very much. We got a raisin question here from Mr. Michael Runn. Michael Runn, I got to have a beer with you later on tonight. California raisins, what would be a minimum ending stock requested to get to new crop supplies? Mr. Souza.
Traditionally, we sell about 25,000 tons a month. This year will be a little bit less than that because of the supply situation. The raisin industry's marketing year runs from August 1st through July 31st. So the carryout inventory has to handle the sales for the months, basically for 3 months, which would be August, September, and October, which is somewhere between 20 and 25,000 tons a month. So normally you need about, and I'm talking short tons now, so you need about 75,000 short tons or a little less than 70,000 metric tons to carry the customer requirements until you're able to utilize a new crop.
Great, thank you very much. We got a few minutes here, so Courtney, I'll come back to you on cranberries. What are some of the unique health benefits of a cranberry? You can tell us in a minute or two or less.
Sure. The cranberry has two major categories of health benefits. It has a beautiful health halo with consumers around the world because of the high property of antioxidants. But even more uniquely, it is the anti-adhesion or the proanthocyanins that deliver urinary tract health benefit. There's been a lot of research behind that, and there's a lot of progressive research on how that property also will improve your health in oral care, digestive care, cardiovascular care as well.
Great, thank you. We have another cranberry question here from the audience. Courtney, I'll address it to you as well. Why is the cranberry ending stock decreasing exponentially each year? Will this be a problem in the future?
The statistics we showed are reflective of dried cranberries, and with the tightness in the industry related to fruit and production, we are seeing the ending inventories going into new crop year declining because the demand has outstripped what's available in terms of capacity and fruit. So again, if the crops grow and we see more SDC qualified fruit coming into the industry as well as production capacity grow, I think those ending inventories, the idea is that they won't be as low into future years.
Great, thank you very much. We have no more audience questions, so at this time, I'd like to thank you all for listening to us. Hopefully you gained some information and insight from this program, and we look forward to helping you guys in future years. Thank you very much.